All right. Today we are going to be talking once again to Mike Kingston, who is the creator, writer for the wrestling comic book series Headlocked, and he's currently running a new Kickstarter. So I thought it'd be a good time to catch up with him. I think the last time we caught up was at New York Comic Con. So I thought I'd bring him in, see how he's doing, and learn a little bit about his new project. So let me just bring him in, and we'll find out together. Hey, Mike, how's it going?
It's going. We're getting there. So
Yeah,
how's
staying safe and all that.
What's that?
Staying safe and all that.
I'm doing my best. I mean, my life isn't
Yeah.
drastically different. I mean, I'm not on the road for conventions, which hurts, but I mean, I still work a full-time job, and that hasn't stopped. And then obviously I'm producing content as much as I can as well. So I'm just as busy as I ever was.
Well, before we get into a little more about that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your current project that you're currently running your Kickstarter for, and tell us a little bit about it, and yeah.
So it's called Tales from the Road, and it's I guess it's an anthology, you'd call it. There's 13 different stories by 14 different wrestlers. They're all televised. I mean, most of them are WWE or AEW wrestlers, and they're just for people that know, like, Headlocked is the story about a college theater major working his way through the wrestling business, and it's told from one character's perspective. So basically, what you see is what's around him. But like, if you're training to become a wrestler, like, you don't necessarily see Hulk Hogan, but you have to know who Hulk Hogan is. So like, we tell these stories to sort of build out the universe. They're backup stories essentially, but some of them are related to the main story, or some of them are related to characters from the main story, but some of them are just fun stories. Some of them are locales that we may want to visit. The story I did with Christian is about the Canadian Death Tours, which is back in the wintertime when the lakes freeze over up in Winnipeg. There's a guy that does wrestling shows for the communities up there that don't get a lot of entertainment, and they live in really tiny houses and stuff, and they perform in like a school gym, and they go from town to town, and they drive across frozen lakes, and it's like a 30-day thing, and everything's super expensive because it's hard to get trucks up there, whatever. And it's a thing that exists in wrestling, and a lot of the Canadian wrestlers did it. Christian, Chris Jericho, Edge, went through all that stuff. So we did a story about that, and then down the road, maybe in a book or two, I'll be able to take Mike Hartmann through there. So all the stories exist for a reason. Some of them are foreshadowing, some of them, character depth, and some of them are just fun stories. They're in all different kinds of genres. We've got horror-based stories. We've got fantasy-based stories. We've got one that's basically a riff on the old El Santo monster movies. There's a little everything. And I'd like to say the common denominator is that they're all fun, or, at least entertaining. But that's what we do.
So it looks like you have some of the returning people that you've worked with in the past, and then I would assume you have some new contributors.
Yeah. So I got one of the cool things about doing partnerships. When I do conventions, I don't know if people remember comic book conventions, but there were these things that we used to have at arenas and convention centers, and people would get together. Back in the old days.
Lots of people, very close quarters.
I know it sounds antiquated now, given the state of pandemic, but back in the day, yeah. So I was able to build relationships with people and stuff. So, I'm working on a story with Dolph Ziggler for this. He's currently in WWE. He's actually wrestling for the WWE title of the next pay-per-view. And he's a big fan of Trauma, which is how I met him at San Diego Comic-Con doing a panel about trauma. So we're going to do a trauma-inspired story. So we got that. Joey Janela, who's from AEW. I've done a lot of work with him, Game Changer Wrestling. He's doing a story. If Taya Valkyrie from Impact, her story is the Santo Monster movie riff, which is it's a lot of fun. Dominic Dijakovic, who's in NXT right now, we did a horror-based story that about two guys that break down and outside a house and going to use a phone, and that's a lot of fun. I have a story with Gangrel that we co-wrote about a guy that trains Bigfoot to wrestle. So we're all over the place. You know, the genres are all over the place. The stories are all over the place. You know, sometimes we get a little, you know, we'll do some stuff that's not necessarily reality based, but we usually try to find a way to tie it back to reality. Maybe it's you know, like somebody's daydreaming about it, or it's a fantasy or something. You know, we have a story about that I co-wrote with MVP about, which is essentially the Punisher of shady promoters. And, you know, it's a very violent story, but, you know, when you get to the end of it, I'm going to kind of spoil the ending here, but it's a kid who just got his first empty pay envelope, and he's just sitting in his car kind of like, what the hell? And so the preceding story was, you know, sort of a fantasy that he had. So we try to tie them all back somewhat to reality, but we hit all the genres, and like I said, it's fun to collaborate with all these different wrestlers.
Now, you've been working on Headlocked for a few years now. How have you felt that it's grown and evolved since since it was your initial idea?
I mean, I think I'm very happy with how it's going. I mean, it's tougher on some levels just because wrestling's gotten so big and there's so many more guys under contract that there used to be. Like, I used to kind of have a pick of really good wrestlers. You know what I mean? Like, basically I could do what I wanted with almost anybody. And now, like, you know, over the last, say, like 3 years, WWE is basically quadrupled the size of their roster, and AEW exists now, and they're on TNT, and they have, you know, so those guys are under contract. So it's trickier for me to be able to get guys to be able to collaborate with, and to get guys to do appearances at shows and whatnot. So, you know, you do your best to adapt, but you know, I mean, it's you keep fighting. I mean, Dolph Ziggler is under WWE contract, you know, but he's been there so long that he has the ability to do outside projects. He's a aspiring comedian, or not aspiring, but you know, whatever, he does comedy tours and stuff. So, you know, I think he was on Roast Battle with Sarah Tiana, and he does you know, a lot of that stuff. So he has permission, due to his length of tenure with the company, to be able to do some stuff outside of the contract. But there's some people, you know what I mean, like, that I'd never be able, like, if I wanted to do something with Becky Lynch, like, there's just no way it could happen outside of the WWE purview. So it's tricky. It's real tricky to move in the world now. But you know, I keep making it happen.
Oh, well, you are, I consider you to be one of the hard working indie creators that I know, and I know it must kind of be tough, not to put you on the spot, but it must be tough for you not to be able to go to conventions, because I know that, you know, pretty much every weekend you're on the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big revenue, definitely a big hit to my revenue. And, you know, when I'm running a Kickstarter, I mean, I usually try to schedule it around 4 to 5 conventions, and now I don't have that. And, you know, everybody that existed in the public space has sort of retreated to the internet to make their money. So, you know, there's just, the bandwidth is just so much thinner than it's ever been, and getting people to look your way is tough. And then, obviously, in the last week since I started, you know, I started my Kickstarter, and then wrestling and comics are both having some long overdue and very necessary conversations about abuse and keeping the performers and fans safe.
Yeah.
And, you know, those things need to happen, and they definitely supersede, you know, my wrestling comic. But it does make it does make it difficult when you have a prescribed little bit of time to market this thing, to try to get people to look at you. So, it's really been like the worst of all scenarios, trying to trying to get out there and be like, hey, look at me. And to a certain extent, I've been trying to lay back and just let people say the things that they need to say, because they're all very important and whatnot. So I've been relying somewhat on my existing fan base that I've built, and our book is funded, and that's fine, and I want to make it even bigger. So we're hoping to grow it in the next 30 days, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's been a rough couple weeks for both wrestling and comic books with the
just the
different
world in
issues that
general.
have.
I mean, honestly.
Well, that's the past couple months. I haven't left my neighborhood pretty much in the past since March. So
I hear you. I walk through my neighborhood every day now. Like it's interesting. It's something that I've never done, because I'm always, I work, 60 to 70 hours a week at my regular job. Then I'm on the road doing comics. And then if I'm not, I'm writing. So, having a luxury to be able to go outside and walk.
Well, I did see your Fitbit tracker from the other day. So you did a lot of walking.
Yeah, I'm a child. So they have achievement badges, and they had one for 100,000 steps. It was 47 miles.
Hey.
That was yesterday, actually. And I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty sore right now, but I played football for a long time. I guess so on some level, there's part of me that misses some sort of athletic competition, I guess, even if I'm just competing against myself. So, it was, I considered it more of a test of mental strength and physical strength. But it was fun. I did it. I don't need to do it again.
You're looking good though. I love the beard and the.
Yeah, it's just it's tricky. I'm just trying to. I mean, this is the one thing I will say is, I mean, obviously, I'm also somewhat well known for all the trash I eat on the road, and not going on the road has kept me slimmer than I normally would be this time of the year.
I know. I gained weight just looking at your posts when you go on the road.
I'm probably the only person that's actually better shape staying home. I eat better at home than I do on the road. So
yeah. Well, I know. You can say anything or not, but I know New York Comic Con is a really big show for you, and chances are that it's probably not going to happen given the current climate.
I'm not planning on any shows for the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, and I also know that you always go out to San Diego, and I know that's probably another big not even moneymaker, but a big exposure place for you.
Honestly, like San Diego is just, it feeds my soul, man. Like I love that city. I love San Diego Comic Con. Like, I don't know. A lot of people don't like Comic Cons. A lot of creators don't like Comic Cons, but I love them, man. I love being out amongst my people. When I grew up, I'm obviously not a spring chicken, but when I was a kid, man, wrestling and comics were not cool, and it wasn't cool to like them. And I guess there's part of me that really enjoys just being amongst my people, because for a long time it was a hobby. They were hobbies. I had 2 wrestling friends in high school and no comic friends. So it's just, it's nice to be out amongst my people. And, I love traveling. I love seeing everything. I grew up poor, and I mean, I didn't leave upstate New York until I was like 31 for the first time. So it's, I do miss all of those things. But it's for the greater good right now.
Yep. So what kind of now that you've kind of getting back to the Kickstarter, what do you have any stretch goal in mind that you can talk about? Because I know that you've already met the goal, and so usually the next steps are stretch goals.
So I just put out an update today, and I was asking people what type of stretch goals they want to see. One of the things that's been difficult is there's been a lot of people in wrestling that have sort of revealed themselves to be not great people. And one of them was originally slated for our book, and I had to remove him because, I don't tolerate that. stuff at all.
Yes.
And so I had to replace him with somebody else. And so I've been sort of trying to lay back a little bit and just trying to see what the dust is going to settle, because I don't want to put some, at this point, I mean, there's been people that have surprised me. There's people that I've known for a long time that I never would have in a million years suspected that they were not good people. So on some level, I'm kind of trying to lay back a little bit and wait and just kind of see how things shake out before I go adding content. But I've got some ideas. I mean, we've got one of the things that we have in the book that we didn't talk about is we have pinups. And one of my favorite things about Headlocked is that we have these tiers in every one of our Kickstarters where you can be drawn into the book as a wrestler. We take your facial likeness and we build a character around you. And like there's probably a dozen characters across the first 4 trades that are characters or people who have been high level backers. So what we're doing for this particular Kickstarter is, because a lot of these stories have already been created, and they've been sort of obscure stories that we've done elsewhere, we're doing some sort of pinups, and we'll turn them into different things. And I don't exactly know. It'll depend on who the backers are and what kind of character we design for them. But we have Jill Thompson creating a character, we have Ed McGuinness creating a character, and Lauren Moran, who's a very popular wrestling illustrator and designer. So people that pledge at those tiers can have it's obviously it's a one-off tier, but people who pledge at that tier, like if you pledge at the Ed McGuinness tier, like Ed McGuinness will draw you, or create a wrestling character around your face, and then we'll make it into like a pinup, like it'd be a pinup in the middle of a wrestling magazine or a newspaper article. We'll find a way to make that one page tell a story. But it's fun to me because Headlocked has been a difficult journey. We've never really been super supported by like sort of the mainstream comics apparatus, I guess. So we don't exist if it isn't for the crowdfunding and the support that we've had from fans. So to me, it's super, super neat to be able to, let the people that have helped us the most become a part of the actual series. And like, as we made ancillary products, we were part of the last Kickstarter, we were part, somebody asked us, they do a dice game, a wrestling dice game. And they asked if they could design some Headlock characters, so in theory, you could have a Headlock character play against like Randy Savage or somebody, and you get stats and whatnot. And some of the characters that we made on those cards are characters that were high level backers to our Kickstarter. So now like you're sort of branching out into the world. Like people might see you in Headlock. They might play, they might play your card in Champions of the Galaxy. And like, I think that stuff is super cool.
Yeah, definitely. Moving, are you still, is Jerry Lawler still working with you guys? We're doing those awesome covers.
We're doing two covers for the book this time. We're doing a variant cover. So Jerry's going to do a Rockwell cover. We're actually doing it based on I don't know if you remember the old Ticket Taker cover where he's sort of behind the thing, and there's posters all around. So we're going to do that where the posters will be some of the stories and wrestlers that are featured.
Oh, that's cool.
And then Mikkel, the main artist on Headlocked, Mikkel Molapola, who's a Samoan wrestler from New Zealand, is going to do a cover based on the Cannonball Run movie poster. And we've got some of the, because one of the things about the Tales from the Road stories is we've got some pretty colorful characters that are in this in these stories. There's a sort of a famous, legendary, awful promoter named Tommy Tuxedo. There's an old lady who's like a hat pin granny. There's a really loud, sort of angry dude that runs the Death Tours. There's a lot of fun characters. So to be able to make like a sort of an ensemble poster, and we actually have 2 tiers where people can be drawn onto the cover of that. We'll create you into a character, and we'll draw you into a cover, and then make some pinups. but that tier I think is sold out. So it's fun. You know, I think we've got two cool covers. We've got, I think, 14 wrestlers associated with this thing. Some high level artists. I mean, it's a real, I personally feel like anyway, it's a real murderer's row of talent. So I hope people give it a shot. And you don't ever have to have read anything related to Headlock to understand the stories in the book. They're all standalone, easily accessible. They range from 6 to 12 pages. But you know what I mean? Like you can follow any one of them. So it's a good jumping on point for people. Or it's just something that you can read, you know, that's fun. Like that's not tied to any of the continuity. I mean, it is obviously there's some value there if you're a reader, but if not, you can still have a real good time with it.
So where can people, check out more about not even Headlocked and the Kickstarter?
The Kickstarter is Headlock Tales from the Road, and all of our social media is Headlock Comic. It's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I run it all. So I mean, if you have any questions, I'm always I'm the one that's sort of behind all the accounts. So I'm always happy to answer them. But we've still got a couple limited tiers left. We've got signed prints. We've got like comic book inspired art prints that are signed by wrestlers. We have all kinds of neat memorabilia. You can get art prints that we've done. We do limited edition convention prints. And for the first time ever, we've put the stock up. What we have left for stock up, where people can pledge to get like 3 or 5 or 10 of the art prints. You can see 2 of them behind me there in the upper left-hand corner. There's one that we did of Sting. That's a riff off the Avengers Vision cover, and then just a Harley Quinn-based Alexa Bliss that Mikkel did. So there's good. We got a lot of cool stuff there for people who like wrestling, for people who like comics. There's a lot of cool tiers. There's a tier for anyone. So
now, have you written any? I know that you've written. We're writing a couple, things for other, for other stories. Have you done any more of that, or is anything in the works?
Yeah, I just finished. I think it's going to press real soon. But there's a superhero story called The Healing, and they basically 10 different creative teams told 10 different chapters of an ongoing story. And I did mine with Barry Kitson, which was really cool because I'm a big fan of his art. And it was cool to have a guy like, on that level, draw something that I wrote. That's coming out. That was a Kickstarter, and I think it's coming out soon. I know I just saw some finished pages of that story. There's a movie coming out that should have been out by now, but it's going to be coming out probably in the fall, called Cage Fighter, which is a independent MMA based movie that John Moxley is a star of. I wrote a graphic novel tie-in to that. That's like a prequel to the series. It's based on Moxley's character. That's in production. I wrote all that. After Tales from the Road, I'm doing a comic book based on a popular wrestling podcast called Talking Shop, and I'm working on volume 5. I got a couple chapters of that written too. So, and we produce comics for Pro Wrestling Crate, and that's where some of the Tales from the Road stories come from. And I have some fun collaborations lined up well into the fall. So it's funny because obviously I've done one convention, and probably by the end of the year I'll have done one convention for the entirety of this year. And
you could go down to Tampa.
My most prolific output as a writer. So,
if you want to, you can go down to Tampa. I think they're still having theirs.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I've considered it. I have I just don't think I can right now. But I don't know. Like New York would be the test. If they ran New York, it would be hard to say no to that. I know MegaCon moved to November, like Halloween weekend. So, and they're supposed to bump down to 25,000 25,000 capacity. I have to think that, I mean, obviously we're on fire right now, and I have a feeling that we're probably going to be on fire for the rest of the summer, the way things look. I mean, all these cases are going to turn into hospitalizations and such. And I'm sure July is going to be a real unpleasant month, and a lot of people are going to die. And it's awful that this is how we've chosen to manage this.
Well, outside of New York, I think New York's done a good job.
No, I get it. I mean, you know what I mean? But New York got hit so hard so early, and then I think they closed everything down, and then now these people just open back up. And one of the things is funny, I have a biochemistry degree, and one of the things that is interesting about this is that the public isn't used to seeing science happen in real time. So information changes as you study the virus. I know, when some of the stuff they told us at the beginning, their finding isn't necessarily all accurate, because, your information changes with more testing and more experimenting and stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, it does appear that indoor events are the big spreading, incident. And it's maybe not as bad outdoors. It looks like the protesting hasn't generated a ton of it. But the people in bars, people in churches, people in meatpacking plants, prisons, nursing homes, or whatever, seem to be the people that are most affected. So, and who knows, that might change. But people aren't used to seeing that. They're used to getting the pill at the end and not seeing the 5 years of research and trial and error that goes into that. So I think that's made it difficult for people. And then, because it's America in 2020, we got to politicize everything. And now wearing a mask is political, and it's all just too, ugh.
Yeah, I agree.
But the one thing I didn't mean to put you in the spot. I mean, New York basically was on fire for 2 months, and then we sort of slowly tracked our way out of it. So, I mean, I have to think if the South runs through that, the South and the West run through that same, the same pattern, then maybe, I don't know, we'll be on the other side of this, by the end of the year, and maybe some of the November and December based conventions will happen. I mean, and honestly, I would trade that for, 100,000 people not to die in a heartbeat, but obviously that's not anything I have control over. So I'm just trying to position myself the best I can and try to, you try to read the tea leaves and you try to pivot and just do what you can, because you can't do what you did, or you're gonna fall.
Well, I think that's a great attitude to have, and knowing you and talking to you over the years, and I would expect that from you as a philosophy.
Well, I mean, that's how I've had to be. I mean, everything I've done has been, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, there isn't one part of what I've done that's like a conventional path, but it works for me. Yeah. And I mean, there have been wrestling comics that have come since I started, and they're already gone. So, like you gotta. I think in 2020, the thing that I do a lot of panels about how to break into comics, and I do panels about indie comics. And I think the most important thing you can do is find your audience. Don't wait for your audience to come to you, because everybody's out there fighting for eyeballs. You're competing. I'm competing with Fortnite. I'm competing with YouTube videos. I'm competing with everything. It's not like I'm just competing with other comics or even just other wrestling comics. So I mean, I do my best to go out and find my audience.
Well, and I know that you definitely have a loyal following.
No, I've been lucky, man. I've been super, super lucky that, the people that come seem to like it. They like to stick, and they stick around. So
I think I told you that I think it was last summer. I was down in visiting some family down in Beacon, and I went to one of the breweries there, and one of the guys in the brewery had a Headlock shirt on. I was like, "Hey!" He goes, I just like wrestling, and I like the shirt. And I said, "Hey,
Yeah, no, I mean,
that's good."
every once in a while I'll see one. I'll be watching like WWE. I'll see one in the crowd, or they had a documentary series at one point, and one of the guys was wearing the shirt when he went into like the
Yeah,
WWE Performance Center. And I always get a kick out of it, honestly. Like,
yeah,
it's just cool to think that something that you made in your bedroom or whatever just finds its way out into the world. And I don't know, it always tickles me to no end when I see my name on something, or when I see Headlocked on something, or whatever, man. It's just
yeah.
it's cool.
It's well
You never
deserved.
lose that thrill.
It's well deserved. Is there anything else that you'd like to maybe mention about
uh
anything?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we're I just want people to, it's tough out there right now, and there's a lot of people that are angry about a lot of things, and a lot of it's justified. But you know just be good to each other, man. Just try to. It's hard. We're all stretched emotionally thin by everything right now, and just try not to go into your conversations with people or your social media interactions. Try not to go into them, you know, keyed up, man. Just try to give people. Just try to be good to each other.
Excuse me. Oh well, again, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. And again, if you ever have another project that you would like to talk about, then you're more than welcome to come here, and I'll do what I can to help you promote.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I do think I'm gonna have another project or two, hopefully by the end of the year, assuming everything goes smoothly. But I mean, things
Well, we
things
kind of
change
dodged
on
the
a
murder
dime
hornets,
here,
I think.
so
We dodged the murder hornets, I think.
sure. I do. I mean, I'm almost afraid to say it out loud though, because what if that's what they want you to think? What if the murder hornets are currently like in a trench coat and a top, like a hat, just hiding out around the corner waiting to strike, and we've just forgotten about them?
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let you go, and have a good evening. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
All
Take
right.
care.
Take care. Stay safe.